People, get over it. By the time these young people get ready to have children, they will realize that as the hole in the ozone layer gets larger and larger, more and more sunlight is allowed to enter our environment, and more people who have pale faces are going to die of melanoma, which is a skin cancer that you get if you don't have enough melanin in your skin. Let me tell you, people of color are going to be very much in demand for reproduction in the future. And mark my words, you're laughing now, but you wait 20 years. You won't even have to wait 20 years, because they're going to see that if they want their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren to survive, they're going to have some melanin in their skin. That's the way it's going to be. This is going to take care of itself. They're afraid that they're going to lose their so-called superiority. They're afraid that they're going to have to face the truth, that they aren't white and they aren't superior and they are not the color of their skin because God made them white. They're going to have to face the fact that all of us came originally from a country on the continent of Africa, and our ancestors, if you trace your DNA back far enough, you'll find out that your ancestors looked like you. They didn't look like me, because their bodies produced a lot of melanin to protect their cells from the damaging rays of the sun. And here's what's going to solve this. As this climate change gets more and more extreme, and more sunlight is allowed to enter our environment, more and more people who are this color are going to encourage their children to marry people of your color, so that their children, listen to me, so that their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren will survive in the future. People of this color.
I disagree with you, but this is how crazy it is. Miss Jane Elliott, I think they would shoot the sun out of the sky before they would. I feel like they are this wedded to this ideal that they rather black out the sun and shoot it out of the sky than have to be forced to reconcile with their very genealogy.
See, I don't think they're that stupid.
Yes, ma'am, you've been living longer than me. You don't think they're that stupid? Look at where we are right now. They reelected this person.
Wait. You have to remember that we elected Barack Obama twice.
Did we?
Yes, we did. And that can happen again, because it must happen again. We must convince people that this fool is not any whiter than any of the rest of the world. He's from Africa just like everybody else does. But he got from Africa and went to his ancestors went too far north, and they forgot everything that they had learned when they lived in Africa. He is a result of a group of people who forgot what they were taught. And now, in the last 20 years, we haven't been teaching it again. We have been teaching the wrong thing, because we've got people out there banning books. I have been banned on colleges and universities all over the United States because what I say upsets the apple cart here. And I'm going to continue to say it until some fool gets up the courage to shoot me, and then you're going to have to listen to me. Then you're going to have to celebrate Then you're going to have to celebrate Jane Elliott Day once a year. How do you think these folks will feel about that? I am guaranteed to stay alive for as long as I have to, because they're afraid to kill me. Because no power on earth can stop a man with a dream or an idea whose time has come. I don't know who said it, but they were right. The idea of one race and one color group, shades of brown, is an idea whose time has come. And you can deny it until hell freezes over, and it will still be the truth. You and I are 30th to 50th cousins. That's a fact. Wait a minute. You were here first, and you will be here last. You have to realize that. There are three simple things you have to know. Without blacks, there would be no whites. Those two words are absolutely ridiculous. Without people who look like you, there would be no people who look like me. Without women, there would be no men. And without Jews, there would be no Christians. And those are the three isms that we fight all day, every day. Racism, sexism, and anti-Semitism. It's ridiculous. Those three facts are facts. You can argue with them until you can skate across the surface of hell, but it won't work, because those three things are true. Once we get those into our heads, then we're going to learn to appreciate one another as we are.
I'm good with it. I've always, I've been trying to figure out how to dismantle it, but it seems like the pushback, because what I've assessed is that people haven't done a lot of work on themselves. So we are in a nation of people who are not fully formed, aren't fully developed emotionally and spiritually or mentally. And this is one thing that they can wrap themselves around, particularly in the United States of America, where it's predominantly people who identify as being white. And because of the self-segregation, they also have a very narrow view of everybody else. And this feels good to them. This feels good enough to them to get out in the streets and march and vote and do and harm people and do all of the things to preserve it. And that's something that's hard to fight against, Miss Jane Elliott. I feel like it's their made up mind is hard to change.
Hey guys, thanks for always coming back to watch out my video. So I recently came across a video featuring educator Jane Elliott, and I have to say it was one of those videos that immediately grabs your attention. Whether you agree with everything she says or not, she raises questions that make you stop, think, and even reconsider some of the things many of us have taken for granted. As I listened to her, I realized that this wasn't just another conversation about race. It touched on climate change, human biology, education, history, and where humanity could be heading in the future. So guys, I want us to watch this video until the end, and you are going to buy me a coffee, guys, if you are going to click that subscription button. Otherwise, let's watch this out.
But it has to change. We have to inform people that only 15 to 18%, 15 to 18% of the human beings on the face of the earth are classified as white. And it's a misclassification because we are not white. We have been in the minority always, and we are in a smaller and smaller minority. You need to realize that. The Father Time is going to solve this whole problem, because in a very short time now, people who look like me are going to see the advantage in looking like you, because nature is going to kill them off if they don't. It's that simple.
Ciao. Well, I thought that was going to happen in COVID, but it didn't. We're here with Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is here. Oh my God. There was a week when people were like, Black people are immune. And I was like, finally, this makes sense. And then the opposite. I don't know what happened, but we disproportionately are impacted by everything in this country. Wait. Well, I'm not holding my breath. I'm going to forge forward to build the world that I want to live in and wait for people to either die off or figure it out. But to your point, we sit here today, Jade Elliott, I was saying that you were able to get on this technology so much easier than some folk that I know happened like a third of your age. And what I'm smiling about, though, your books are being banned. The books that you like to read are being banned. With the flip of a button now, they're going to erase whole histories. And because we are scrolling on things and not forced to all have to know the same things, and facts aren't facts anymore, and people doing research on YouTube, not actually reading or cracking open a whole book and reading it, and then being in community with scholars, I fear that the next 20, 30 years, if we're not careful, will erase everything that you just said out of your mouth as fact, and it will be replaced by these people's quote unquote facts.
But the way to solve that is refuse to allow them to ban books. When I was teaching, that was in the days of the communist scare, and a man came, and I was doing my student teaching, and a man came to the third grade in which I was doing my student teaching and said, we want to go through all the books in your third grade library and take out the ones that are communism, teach communism. Hazel Grant said, go right ahead. So they put a whole bunch of books up on the top shelf of the library and said, now don't let the children sign up those books, and we'll come and get them. She said, thank you very much. And she ushered them to the door. She closed the door behind them, and she said, now put those books back on the shelf and let's go to work. And that's exactly what we did. And that's what teachers have to do today. When the book banners come in, the teachers in that classroom, the educators have to say, show me your license to practice education. Show me your education that proves that you are capable of deciding who should or should not read which books. Show me that. Until you have a certificate that proves that you are capable of being an educator, do not come in here and tell me what to do with these books. And do not take one book off the shelf in this school building, because these are all owned by the taxpayers. And I will call the police and accuse you of having stolen public property. It's time for educators to get spines and say, fire me if you want to, but you're going to have a reason for firing me, and I'm going to give you a reason. I'm going to educate instead of indoctrinate. I'm going to teach my students how they should behave when some fool comes in and tells them they're banning some books by somebody like Mark Twain, Alice Walker, Dostoevsky. I will not allow that. My children, my students have the right to learn what's in those books. And if you are afraid of what's in those books, your fear is your problem. Do not visit it upon my students.
That fortitude that we talked about in our first interview, where your dad was like, I don't know if you should be doing this, Jane. I don't know, but you were like, I'm going to do it anyway. You had parents coming to the school threatening your job. You had death threats. You had people threatening to kill you. You still do?
Oh, absolutely. I get letters all the time, emails all the time that tell me what's going to happen to me. And they use the B word. And for me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. So when somebody calls me the B word, that's what I do. I laugh and I say, "You're out of control, aren't you, darling? But I am in control, and you can't take my control away from me by using that word, because for me, that word means being in total control, honey, and I'm glad you realize that I'm in control." Then they stop using it. They have no other word.
Why do you think they're so angry, and why aren't there more Jane Elliott's? Why are you such an anomaly? Why aren't there more people, when they find the truth, say, hey, this is the truth. Let's get out there and tell the truth. Why aren't there more of you?
Most women, number one, can't afford to and are afraid to.
Flex?
We can't afford. Most of us are our own support. We can't afford to lose our job. I had a husband who was working, so if I had lost my job, I would not have gone hungry. Would have been not so happy, but I wouldn't have gone hungry. I could afford to stand up and say, no more. I'm not going to tolerate this. And I'm going to teach in such a way that my students don't tolerate this. And this past August, 10 of those students who were in the film The Eye of the Storm came back to Riceville, and we met in the school where we had done the exercise, and we sat down and discussed what we had learned in the ensuing 55 years. It was absolutely magic to see those 60 and 62-year-old people saying, at this point, one of them said, "You taught us the truth. You taught us to tell the truth." And I thought, if that's what I am remembered for, thank God for my father, because he said, if you're going to lie, don't lie to me. So we were very careful not to lie to him. And he appreciated people. He told the truth. And when I showed them the first film that was made in my classroom, when it was over, I showed it to my mother and my father in the hotel, which I owned. And he stood up after it was over and took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his bib overalls, blew his nose, wiped his eyes, and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." Yeah, and now when psychologists say that's a terrible thing to do to children, I say, my father said at the age of 60, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old, because I would have been a different kind of teacher and a different kind of student and a different kind of human being if I had learned at 9 what my third graders learned at 9.
But you somehow figured out how to teach a thing you didn't learn. The Eye of the Storm, PBS, you can go check it out, PBS series, Frontline, Jane Elliott, Riceville, Iowa, 99.9% white. But somehow you were able to bring forth this notion of what it looks like to be unfairly discriminatory towards people just because of how they came out of their mother's womb. And it was stunning. To this day, it's still stunning to see the reaction of the children and the transformation. So you learned something. You learned something, even if your dad didn't know, even if you didn't know. You learned something that I'm curious why more people aren't like you.
Because they don't have to be. And because they are rewarded for not being like me. If you want to be like me, that means you want to suffer. You want people to hate you. You want people to mistrust you. You want people to wonder how long you've been crazy. And that's what I've gone through for the last 55 years. And I say to myself, every time I get one of these hateful letters, I think, I wish I could put that person through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Because if you go through it, you don't learn about it. You learn how it feels to be there. And that's what I want. We learn by doing. I want people to go through that experience so that they find out how it feels to be on the receiving end of that which we dish out to people of color in this country on a daily basis. I want them to feel it in their hearts and in their heads instead of just thinking about it. I want them to realize how it feels. Once they find out how it feels, they will not want that to happen to their children or their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren. They will want to change the situation so that nobody has to feel less than because of somebody else's ignorance about skin color. Skin color is not the problem. Self-imposed ignorance about skin color is the problem. And that is curable. You can cure your own racism. Get a book. Get the book. Oh my God. Get the book On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. Get his book On Tyranny, and then get his book on freedom. It's on the ceiling, on the shelf behind me. Get those two, but get On Tyranny first. It will only take you an hour to read it. There are 20 lessons that we have learned in this century that we could practice to make the next century better. Get the book On Tyranny and read it, and insist. And I buy 6 at a time. When I go to the bookstore, I buy 6 copies of On Tyranny, and I hand them out to people who come to my house. And I say, read this book. And they look at me like, oh, here we go again. And I'm thinking, no, here you came to see me. You came to listen to me. No, I'm going to give you something that you take with you in your hand, and you have to make a choice as to whether or not to read it. Now, if you decide not to read it, that says you don't give a damn. If you decide to read it, you're going to say, I'm going to buy this and give it to my kids and my nieces and nephews and my aunts and uncles. Everybody needs to read Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny and his On Freedom. People, it's a matter of self-educating. You don't have to be in high school or college. You don't have to be taught by somebody else. It is up to you to take on your own learning. Yes. And On Tyranny and On Freedom will make you a different kind of person.
I love it. Last time you were here, you recommended Nazis versus Gangsters versus Nazis, and I listened to it on Audible, and oh my God, you know, we had on recently Dr. Kelly, whose book is We Refuse, a book about resistance, but the Gangsters versus Nazis was inspiring. Kelly Carter Jackson was here this week. It was inspiring. Her book is inspiring, but that book was also inspiring because it shows what it looks like when people, you know, don't allow folk to come in and do whatever they want.
Right now we're seeing it, but you have to read this one. You have
Erasing
to read
History.
Erasing History by Jason Stanley. You have to read it, and you have to read it this week. Don't put it off until next week. Read it this week, because what he says is, until you've walked in somebody else's shoes, you don't realize what it is, what they're going through. And that I read that and I thought, oh my God, the man has seen the film The Eye of the Storm, or he has seen the follow-up film in which we put adults through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Everybody needs to take a look at Class Divided, because that's one that they used the first film of the Class Divided, The Eye of the Storm, and then we put a group of adults through the exercise and filmed that, and it's just wrenching when you realize that none of those blue-eyed people ever considered themselves less than until they were in that exercise.
Yes. Yes.
And in this country, dark brown people don't get the chance to think of themselves as more than, because they go through the exercise on a daily basis. I want the exercise, the skin color exercise, stopped, and I want it stopped.
Now, before I go any further, I want to make something very clear. Everything I'm about to discuss is based on what Jane Elliott shared in the video. So, some of our points are connected to well-established scientific facts, while others have her own predictions and interpretations about the future. So, I'm not presenting every claim as established science. My goal here is to summarize what I had, explain it in simple language, and then share my own thoughts as we go along. At the end of the day, it is up to each one of us to listen carefully, think critically, and come to our own conclusions, guys. So, guys, one of the first things that caught my attention was her discussions about melanin. Most people know melanin simply as a pigment that gives our skin, hair, and eyes their color. But according to Jane Elliott, melanin is much more than that. She argues that if environmental conditions continue changing the way many scientists predict, melanin could become one of the most important biological advantages a person can have. So, guys, as I listened to her, I immediately started thinking about conversation we are every year regarding climate change. Scientists continue warning about rising global temperatures, stronger heat waves, changing weather patterns, and increasing environmental stress across many parts of the world. At the same time, we also hear discussions about ultraviolet radiations and how too much exposure to the sun can damage the skin. So, increase the risks of certain skin cancers and create other health problems. Now, Jane Elliott takes the conversation a step further. She suggests that if these environmental conditions continue getting worse over the coming decades, the natural predictions provided by melanin could become even more valuable than it is today. So, guys, in other words, she believes the changing environment may eventually force humanity to look at melanin from an entirely different perspective. So, whether that predictions turn out to be true is something nobody can confidently answer today. So, scientists agree that melanin helps protect the skin from ultraviolet radiations. That part is supported by biology. However, the broader predictions that future human survival will largely depend on melanin remains speculative and is not accepted as scientific consensus. I think it is important to separate those two ideas because they are not the same thing. As I continued listening, Jane Elliott made another point that I found very interesting, guys. She reminded her audience that despite all the racial division we see around the world, humanity is eventually a one family. According to modern genetics, all human beings share common ancestry with the scientific evidence indicating that our species originated in Africa before spreading across the globe over thousands of years. Listening to that part made me think about how much energy societies have spent dividing people based on skin color, ethnicity, and physical appearance, guys. Yet, science continues showing that human beings are for more alike than different. So, guys, the difference we see on the outside represent only a thin fraction of who we are biologically. Jane Elliott seemed to be making the argument that many of the categories people use to separate one another are socially constructed rather than barriers that define our humanity. Whether people agree with that interpretation or not, it is certainly encourages deeper reflection about how we view each other. Another part of this video, it focused on adaptations. Human beings have always adapted to different environments throughout history. As population migrated across continents, their body are gradually adjusted to different climate over thousands of generations. In regions with intense sunlight, darker skin offered greater protection against ultraviolet radiations, guys. In regions with less sunlight, lighter skins made it easier for the body to produce enough vitamin D. So, guys, that is one of the fascinating things about human biology. It tells a story of adaptation rather than a superiority. A different environment favor different characteristics, allowing human population to survive under different conditions. So guys, the video then moved into the present day. Jane Elliott argued that climate change is no longer something people can afford to ignore. Around the world, many countries are experiencing record-breaking temperatures, prolonged droughts, stronger storms, and more frequent heat waves. These are issues that scientists continue studying and government around the world are trying to address in different ways. So as I listened, I couldn't help but think that regardless of whether someone agrees with every prediction she makes, environmental changes are becoming harder to ignore. We continue seeing news reports about unusual weather events almost every year, and many communities are already dealing with the consequences, guys. Another major point that I saw in this video had nothing to do with the melanin directly. Instead, she focused on education. She expressed concern about efforts to limit access to certain books or reduce the discussions about history and race in schools. According to her, education gives people the ability to question assumptions, challenge prejudice, and think independently, guys. Personally, I think that point deserves attention regardless of someone's political views. A society that encourages learning, opens discussions, and critical thinking is usually better prepared to solve difficult problems than one that discourages questions. One thing I appreciated while watching the discussion was that it encourages viewers to think rather than simply accept everything they hear, even when I don't completely agree with every point someone makes. I still believe there's value in listening carefully because sometimes a conversation introduces ideas we may never have considered before. At the same time, I also believe it is important to rely on a credible scientific research whenever we are discussing biological, climate change, or human health. So, predictions about the future should always be examined carefully and compared with the available evidence. So, after watching the entire video, this is the conclusion I came to. Jane Elliott message is less about predicting the future with certainty and more about encouraging people to think seriously about where humanity is heading. She uses melanin as part of the broader conversation about climate, adaptation, equality, and our shared humanity, guys. Whether every prediction eventually becomes a reality remains unknown, but the questions she raises about environment, responsibility, human unity, and the importance of education are conversations worth having. As always, I love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Jenny Elliott raises important questions that deserve more attention, or do you think some of her predictions go beyond what current scientific evidence supports? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Let's keep the discussions respectively, because the conversation like these are most valuable when people can exchange ideas thoughtfully. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss out the next videos. Otherwise, thanks. I'll see you in the next one.